Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi friends, thanks for being here. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Helps us get this channel to show up under more searches, get more people exposed to Shakyamuni's teachings of the Lotus Sutra. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for your bodhisattva efforts, for your practice efforts, for your resolve, your determination. Thank you. What will we talk about today? Well, we're in the midst of the Diamond Sutra, and we're not going to read this whole book because most of this book is commentary on the Sutra. There's only a very little bit at the front that is the actual Diamond Sutra, which is, as you know, a part of, a small portion of the teachings of the Perfections of Wisdom Sutras. But it's a dense little sutra, isn't it? Dense in, not in its breadth of thinking, but in its considerations of potential. What do I mean? Let's get into it. This 15th part, we're going to hit on some really core Buddhist ideas. So this is a conversation not with Mahamati, as the Lankavatara was, but with Subhuti, a Buddhist scholar in his own right, yeah? Furthermore, Subhuti, if a man or woman renounced their self-existence during the morning as many times as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, and likewise renounce their self-existence during the midday as many times as there are grains of sand in the Ganges. Seems like the proposal of grains of sand in the Ganges would last much longer than a morning, a midday, or evening. Right? This would be a lifetime. But anyway, suppose you could do that. And renounce their self-existence during the afternoon as many times as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, and renounce their self-existence in this manner for many hundreds and thousands and millions and trillions of kalpas. And someone heard this Dharma teaching and did not reject it. The body of merit produced as a result would be immeasurably, infinitely greater. In other words, live your life in accord with the insights that you get from this teaching, this Dharma, this experience, yes? How much more so if they not only wrote it down, but grasped it, didn't just mimic it, but grasped, memorized it, recited it, mastered it, and explained it in detail to others. If you need a more thorough description of what the Bodhisattva path is, I don't know where you'll find it. But we hear this refrain in many sutras, right? It's not just in the Diamond Sutra. Certainly it's in the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra being our guide to self-enlightenment, our guide to living this samsaric life to its full, our guide to our bodhisattva exegesis, our target, our way of living, that will provide all the answers for negotiating samsara through our own specific universe. because it is. Furthermore, Subhuti, inconceivable and incomparable is this Dharma teaching. This Dharma teaching spoken by the Tathagata, Subhuti, for the benefit of those beings who set forth on the foremost of paths, bodhisattvas, for the benefit of those beings who set forth on the best of paths, bodhisattva. For if someone grasps, memorizes, recites, and masters this Dharma teaching and explains it in detail to others, the Tathagata will know them, Subhuti, by the means of his Buddha knowledge. In other words, you can't escape enlightenment, your Buddha-ness, if you follow this behavior, this self-training. And of his Buddha knowledge, right? Knowledge is something that takes place in the samsaric mind. The Buddha-ness only arrives in the sentient mind. And the Tathagata will see them, Subhuti, by means of his Buddha vision. The Tathagata will be aware of them, Subhuti, for all such beings produce a body of merit that has no limits. A body of merit that is inconceivable, incomparable, immeasurable, and boundless. How many times do I talk about the experience of the entire life force, engine, the universe itself? Bring that to bear on your experience of samsara, the uncountable, immeasurable warehouses of identity. For all such beings as these, Subhuti, likewise wear enlightenment upon their shoulders. And how so, Subhuti? This Dharma teaching cannot be heard by beings of lesser aspiration, not by those who mistakenly perceive a self, nor by those who mistakenly perceive a being, a life, or a soul. So all of the human minds we encounter who simply won't listen to anything other than their magical beliefs of ego, their eternal ego, whether they call it soul or spirit or whatever, that they somehow transcend time itself, obey some mystical force that no one can prove or disprove. They've left this earth. They've left, but what they don't understand is that their leaving is still within the warehouse. Their belief in gods and spirits and egos and souls is just another aisle in the warehouse. They haven't gone anywhere. They're completely stuck. For beings who lack the Bodhisattva's aspiration cannot hear, or grasp, or memorize, or recite, or master this Dharma teaching. Moreover, Subhuti, wherever this sutra is explained, that place shall be honored. Whether in the realm of devas, humans, or asuras, that place shall be honored with prostrations and circumambulations. That place shall be like a stupa. This Sangha, right now, you and I, is a stupa. It is, if you will, a protected, yet completely open space-time supporting Buddha-ness, enlightenment. In sharp contrast to those magical thinking among our population who choose to remain in their little warehouse. Don't you want to free them? Don't you feel like, gosh, step outside your warehouse? Just try. But it's not easy to convince people who are stuck in that magical realm, yeah? Even amongst people who call themselves Buddhist. Right? Who still want to cling to the idea that they may come back as a crow or a cow or another being. Ugh. It's so heavy. It weighs heavy on me. Reincarnation. Wow. What a mess. 16. Nevertheless, Subhuti, the noble son or daughter who grasps, memorizes, recites, and masters such a sutra as this, and contemplates it thoroughly and explains it in detail to others, will suffer their contempt. Boy, I've seen that. Their utter contempt. How dare you? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo is all you can say. Plant that seed. You don't know when those people will awaken. But at the same time, don't burn yourself out trying to change them. Just plant the seed, move on. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Don't chant for them, chant for you, because that's how you chant for them. By solidifying your conviction, your resolve, your Buddha-ness, you radiate out that influence, and they will receive it in whatever form they need to, because we don't know what that is. We don't know what their spider web of influences, tendencies, and conditions, their karmic freight train. We don't know it. We only know ours, and barely at that. That's not our focus. Our focus is on Buddha-ness. Yeah? That's what we want to maintain. That's what will ultimately change those in our environments. And you'll see after some time of practice that some of those, what did he say? Contemptuous ones? They won't show up very often. When they do, it'll be kind of startling. I can tell you that from experience. But in general, they just get out of the way. Or they become curious onlookers, people who come to get advice, to learn some things, and always go back to fundamentals. Don't use your samsaric warehouse of information to convince other people. That's your warehouse, not theirs. They'll just go right by them. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, get to the core. Let them develop their Buddha-ness. You can't develop it for them. Always remember that. And how could this be, Subhuti, that bad karma created by these beings in their past lives should result in an unfortunate rebirth? But now, by suffering such contempt, they put an end to the bad karma of their past lives and attain enlightenment of Buddhas. So, poorly written though it is, this is an example of Shakyamuni saying, people who have all these magical, mystical ideas, when you come along and Namo Myoho Renge Kyo them, you're going to make so much sense of life as it is that you're going to shock them. They're not prepared to enter the wonderful outdoors. They're completely content in their fluorescent lighting, soda lighting, whatever warehouse they're in, with their tall shelves of identity. And you come along and you poof that. Yeah, they're going to hold you in contempt. They'll revile you. But those among them who can look at the door that they'd never gone through to peer outside of their warehouse, all of that warehouse of identity and ego and bad karma reinforcing non-enlightenment, it'll just evaporate. It'll be mollified at first, but eventually evaporate as they simply seek outside the warehouse. And this is why I say, when you firm up your Buddha-ness, you radiate that opportunity like the warm sun outside of the warehouse in a beautiful forest with a lake and deer and rabbits. When they look outside the warehouse, oh, it looks so nice. It looks so life-affirming. Oh, smell the air, the beautiful air from all the trees and the fauna and flora. And yeah, that's planting the seed, right? Cracking the door open, leave it ajar. Subhuti, I recall in the past, during the countless infinite kalpas before Dipankara Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, I served 8,400,000 million trillions of other Buddhas and served them without fail. Is he talking about trillions of lifetimes? Of course not. But think for a moment. I don't know how long you've been alive, but I've said before, you look back at 5 years ago who you were and you're a completely different person, right? But that's also true of 5 minutes ago. Seriously, think about it. All it takes is one aha moment, and suddenly you're a completely different person. Everything you know goes through this new lens. It's like going through a funhouse full of twisted mirrors, and then finally you come to a clear one. You go, yeah? So think of every moment. Again, Buddhism is about the mind and how it works. And everything is happening moment to moment for you. My moment to moment and your moment to moment are different because we're in different places with different warehouses. But yet the life occurs moment to moment. And if we understand birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, moment to moment, aren't each of those moments a life? A life, a life, a life, a life, a life, a life. We're perceiving samsarically all of these lifetimes as a contiguous, unbroken line of life, and we call it a lifetime. And yet, very logically, you and I can sit here and talk about our 10-year-old self and our 20-year-old self, and but you can't divide it into 10-year periods without also dividing it into 5-year periods, 1-year periods, 6 months, 6 minutes. Just a moment ago, before you said that, you changed my whole world. Yeah, you're in a new lifetime. Understand the rhetoric of Buddhism. Don't get lost in the mysticism of non-Buddhism. Buddhism is very direct. Just knowing that will help you read sutras with an entirely different insight, yeah? So when he says, I served 8,400,000, blah, 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 he's talking about an unfathomable number, again, the Buddhist example, in mind. When we go to work every day, or we go to school every day, or we go to whatever choo-choo train modeling association gathering, whatever it is, we're dealing not only with other people, however 10, 20, 100, 200, 2,000, but we're dealing with their moment-to-moment lifetimes. And they all have the potential to go, Buddhahood. They may not be exercising it. They may not understand that they're working toward it or against it. But all of them have Buddhahood innately in them. Now consider the statement, I have served 8,400,000 million trillions other Buddhas and served them without fail. Shakyamuni is simply saying that he observes all sentient minds as innately Buddha, though they may be obfuscated by many layers of ignorance. Can you do that? Can you imagine? I can tell you it's hard for me. Some of the things I hear people say make my brain hurt. It's very hard for me to look at that person after they've said something so ignorant with the compassion that your Buddha-ness is crying out. Please look at it. Please consider a different point of view. Get out of your warehouse there. You're in a bad place, in a bad corner of the warehouse that has you trapped. Can you not walk to a window, a door? Breathe. Gosh, where's your Buddha-ness now? Sometimes it's so hard to see in others. And yet, this is what Shakyamuni is saying, that once you have a firm grasp of Buddha-ness, you cannot not see it or experience it. And so every act in samsara, thought, word, deed, is in support of their Buddha-ness rather than what's spouting out of their mouth, what their ignorance is. Don't respond to the ignorance. Respond to their Buddha-ness. Oh, that's so hard to maintain, isn't it? Not all the time, but the ones that confront us, the ones with contempt, it's really hard. To the degree that gets less hard, congratulations. You are more and more in your Buddha-ness, less entangled with the ignorance, your own as well as that which surrounds us, yeah? In the future, in the final epoch, in the final period, in the final 500 years of the Dharma-ending age, the body of merit of the person who grasps, memorizes, recites, and masters such a sutra as this and explains it in detail to others will exceed my former body of merit, not by 100-fold, not by 1,000-fold, or 100,000-fold, or 1,000,000-fold, or 100,000,000, or 1,000,000,000, or 100,000,000,000-fold, but by an amount that cannot be measured, calculated, illustrated, characterized, or even imagined. That's our role. That's you and I. That's overwhelming. This is Shakyamuni's prediction for you and I. Memorize, recite, share, grasp the profundity of this teaching, this Dharma experience. And our samsaric experience cannot be imagined. Subhuti, if I were to describe this noble son or daughter's body of merit, our reward, our experience, to the full extent of the body of merit this noble son or daughter would thereby produce and obtain, it will bewilder or disturb people's minds. It just incomprehensible. Furthermore, Subhuti, inconceivable and incomparable is this Dharma teaching spoken by the Tathagata, and inconceivable is the result you should expect. Do you know what that means? Expectation? It means this. When we sit in front of our mandala, our mirror of Buddha-ness, and we chant Namo Myo Renge Kyo and recite Gangyo, and most especially when we get somebody to join us, and we say, here, do this with me. Just do this. You have a nice warehouse. Let's do this. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. The expectation of Buddha-ness. Remember Nichiren? Single-mindedly expect Buddha-ness, attain Buddha-ness, invite, experience, open, be in, expect it. Buddha-ness. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu, I expect Myoho Renge Kyo. Absolutely, whoever else, whatever other sentient mind is in the room, they may not know what to call it. They may actually call it heinous other stupidities, magic of some different sort, but they will feel it. And they will yearn for it without even knowing what to call it or what it is. That's why it's also incumbent upon us to explain it. But don't force feed it to people. I know some people think that's what shakabuku is. No, the shakabuku was you chanting with them, because you broke their illusions. That's shakabuku. Now it's on them. You can't perform Buddhism on them. They must come to it through their own realizations. All you can do is invite them. Invite them. Continue to invite them. Because you're not speaking to their warehouse. You're speaking to their Buddha. This is the toughest thing to remember in daily life. Don't speak to people's to people's warehouses. Speak to their Buddha. Yeah, easier to say than to do, yes? Where are we? All right, 17. Again, the Venerable Subhuti asked the Buddha, Bhagavan, if someone sets forth on the Bodhisattva path, how should they stand? In other words, I suppose what that means is, how should we present ourselves to the rest of the world? How should they walk? And how should they control their thoughts? Well, that's what we've been talking about. That's what I've been talking about here, right? How do we represent our practice, our memorization, recitation, grasping? How do we present our bodhisattva life to others? How do we do that? And as I said, and as I suspect Shakyamuni will say, speak to their Buddha-ness. Don't speak to their warehouse. Yeah? So Shakyamuni says, Subhuti, someone who sets forth on the Bodhisattva path should give birth to the thought. There's that birth thing again. In the next moment, you should arise the thought, quote, in the realm of complete nirvana, I shall liberate all beings. And while I thus liberate beings, not a single being is liberated. And why not, Subhuti? A bodhisattva who creates the perception of a being cannot be called a bodhisattva. That's the warehouse. Don't communicate to the warehouse. Neither can someone who creates the perception of a life or even the perception of a soul be called a bodhisattva, right? Obviously. You're not in the world as a bodhisattva to change the karmic freight train of the people around you. That's their job. So with the greatest compassion, the greatest compassionate thing you can do is give them the tool to escape their own freight train. Speak to their Buddha. Chant with me. Let's get your Buddha-ness rolling along here. What do I do about my boyfriend? What do I do about my girlfriend? This job sucks and I have rent to pay. Yeah, I understand. I understand. That's your warehouse. I understand. What do you mean that's my warehouse? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Come here, chant with me. But I just want your advice. I'm giving you my advice. Come chant with me. Just 5 minutes. Let me give you a tool that will help you see the solution you need for you to do, because I have no idea. I could spend all day going, well, once upon a time I did this and I did that, and maybe you should, and maybe that. We think we're so smart. What you must realize is you simply do not have the keys to the warehouse of your daughter's behavior, or your father's behavior, or your friend's behavior, or a complete stranger's behavior. You just don't. So why do you keep pounding on that door? Even if that person's warehouse goes, yes, I understand. Yes, Daddy. No, Daddy. Yes, son. I understand, son. Or mothers. Oh, you're so wonderful. I understand. It's so beautiful what you're doing, but I believe in this. You're never going to get in. Never. The only one who can open that door is that person. The job at hand, the mission of this lifetime, is for all we human inventory managers and warehouses need to find the door and walk out the door and experience our own Buddha-ness. Contrary to what some fans of Shakabuku would have you believe, you can't force Buddha-ness on anyone. It's just not possible. To be fair, not everybody who talks about Shakabuku thinks of it that way, but there are some. I just want you to know that the person you're communicating with is Buddha, and you need to let them understand that you have the skeleton key that opens all warehouses. And they do too, they just don't know it. So you want to show it to them. Look, do this. Do this, you'll figure it out. I guarantee it. In fact, I want to hear from you when you figure it out, because I want to help you keep doing this so you can figure it all out. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. That is propagation. That is what Shakyamuni is talking about. Let's continue. In the realm of complete nirvana, I shall liberate all beings. In other words, in my Buddha mind, not my warehouse mind of so much intellect and experience, but in my Buddha-ness, in my great compassion to have others accomplish what I am trying to accomplish, let me give them the tool. Let me offer them the experience. That and nothing else is what will enable them escaping their warehouse. Because as much as a warehouse is a massive collection of karma, attitudes, tendencies, conditions, shelves and shelves, it's also quite a fortress. Think about it. You ever seen a big warehouse like Costco, Sam's Club, Amazon? Walmart, from the outside, they're huge, thick-walled cement, concrete fortresses with tiny little doors, all us little people going in and out, busily collecting things from their warehouse to move them into our warehouse. And while I thus liberate beings, not a single being is liberated, because I'm not liberating their warehouses. I'm reaching into their Buddha. And why not, Subhuti? A bodhisattva who creates the perception of a being cannot be called a bodhisattva. So if you're trying to save the Betty warehouse, the Sandra warehouse, the Sylvain warehouse, the Paul warehouse, you're wasting your time. You can't save those warehouses. You can't liberate those warehouses. You can only liberate the mind that conceives that warehouse. And that mind has Buddha-ness built in. It's just not awake. It's sleeping. It's being dragged along. Wake it up. Neither can someone who creates the perception of a life or even the perception of a soul be called a bodhisattva. You're not going to rescue their soul. Their soul is that damn warehouse. It's not real. And why not, Subhuti? There is no such dharma as setting forth on the bodhisattva path. The experience of a bodhisattva is an experience of Buddhahood, not the experience of being a bodhisattva. Do you see? I know it's a bit of wordplay, but if you pay attention, it's very, very clear. What do you think, Subhuti? When the Tathagata was with Dipankara Tathagata, did he realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment? In other words, by very definition, before I was enlightened, before I had my aha Buddha moment, and I was doing all these dozens of years of other practices trying to figure it out, did I ever know Buddhahood? Well, of course not, by the very definition of the story you told. To this, the Venerable Subhuti answered, Bhagavan, as I understand the meaning of what the Tathagata has taught, when the Tathagata was with Dipankara Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, he did not realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. Why would he be there? It's obvious, right? But Shakyamuni's pointing to, even I, the fully enlightened Shakyamuni Buddha, live the period of my life in ignorance. Give everyone you know the benefit of that doubt, the benefit of that possibility that they're just ignorant Buddhas, like all of us. Grasp that. And to this the Buddha replied, so it is, Subhuti, so it is. When the Tathagata was with Dipankara Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, he did not. He's talking about himself in the third person. He did not realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. Subhuti, if the Tathagata had realized any dharma, Dipankara Tathagata would not have prophesied, quote, young man, in the future you shall become the Tathagata, the fully enlightened one named Shakyamuni. Can you look upon everyone you know, relative, friend, stranger, as a future Buddha? Can you? Subhuti, it was because the Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, did not realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment that Dipankara Tathagata prophesied, Young man, in the future, you shall become the Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, named Shakyamuni. Because you are not now. But you will, with your sentient mind, achieve Buddhahood. Even though it resides within you now, you are operating in your warehouse. You are operating in your own limitations. You are operating in ignorance. That's samsara. You can escape samsara while coursing in it, simply by accessing your mind's enlightened nature. But only you can do that. I can't do it for you. I wouldn't have the first clue. You've arranged your rows and aisles and levels in your warehouse in a way I don't even understand. I can't even see it. It's only accessible to you. And how so, Tathagata? Subhuti is another name for what is truly real. We've talked about this before, the labels we give ourselves, right? It's part of our ego. I'm Sylvain. I'm Sylvain. Sifu Sylvain. I'm all this. Okay, cool. It's just stuff. It's not who I really am, who this act of compassion and will for you to deeply grasp and practice your own enlightenment, that person, that Sylvain, that's not Sylvain. That's something far greater, more universal. I'm using this vehicle, this body, this identity, but just as a sharing utility, right? Giving you some kind of opportunity for your own insight to gain your Buddha-ness, your influence. That influence, that doesn't have a label. Are you going to live the rest of your day with Sylvain influence? Hopefully. I mean, you may identify it that way, but you have to know the influence itself is of your own making. It's not Sylvain's influence. I'm offering it to you so that you influence yourself. How you do that, I have no clue. But I have great, profound confidence that that is the way to Buddha-ness. That much I do know. From experience, I know it. That's prajna knowing. Prajna knowing. What did I say? Anyway, right? Tathagata Subhuti is another name for the Dharma with no beginning. Tathagata Subhuti is another name for the end of dharmas. Tathagata Subhuti is another name for what never begins. And how so? No beginning, Subhuti, is the highest truth. Subhuti, if anyone should claim that Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, realized unexcelled perfect enlightenment, such a claim would be untrue. Subhuti, they would be making a false statement about me. And how so, Subhuti? The Tathagata did not realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. Furthermore, Subhuti, in the dharma realized or taught by the Tathagata, there is nothing true and nothing false. Thus, the Tathagata says, all dharmas are Buddha dharmas. And how so? All dharmas, Subhuti, are said by the Tathagata to be no dharmas. Thus are all dharmas called Buddha dharmas. Every experience that spawns a thought in our sentient mind, an action, anything, arise from this life energy, the engine of life that is the universe. Our realization of that, our witnessing of that, does not create it. We don't find it. We don't attain it, right? All this language, all these words. We become aware of it. And then we can course with it. Bodhisattva. It's not the heavenly spirit. It's not some other place. It's right here and now. And in fact, what he's saying is this very act, you listening to this podcast, the thoughts that you're having, the questions that you're having, everything you're doing is the sentient mind's capacity for perception, for grasping, for enabling your Buddhahood. So everything we do is enlightenment. The only question, the only difference, if it's a difference, is that we can choose to operate within our lovely data warehouse where we're never challenged by a much larger picture of life and stay within our little ego and produce thoughts of how wonderful our ego is to have attained this. Do you see what he's trying to disassemble here? And realize that by joining into Buddhahood, there are no limits. There's no need for a beginning or end. There's just being, its entirety. It's hard to fathom. It's hard to put words to. But do you see what he's pointing at? Subhuti, imagine a perfect person with an immense, perfect body. Immense, of course, because it's the freaking universe he's talking about now. The Venerable Subhuti said, Bhagavan, this perfect person whom the Tathagata says is an immense, perfect body. Bhagavan, the Tathagata, has no body. Thus is it called an immense, perfect body. He's getting it. The Buddha said, so it is, Subhuti, and if a bodhisattva says, I shall liberate other beings, that person is not called a bodhisattva. And why not, Subhuti? Is there any such dharma as a bodhisattva? Words are getting slippery here. What he's trying to point to, though, is that our interaction with others has to be based on Buddhahood. Basically, we're asking other sentient minds, not other warehouses, other sentient minds to awaken to Buddhahood. Not my Buddha, not your Buddha, not their Buddha. Buddhahood, the universal life experience. Witness what's really happening with your local samsaric life from a place that's completely liberated from all of the entanglements of it. The Venerable Subhuti replied, no, indeed, Bhagavan, there is no such dharma as a bodhisattva experience, because it's not a bodhisattva experience. Being a bodhisattva is a samsaric being who's experiencing Buddha-ness. Coursing as a samsaric being to channel this Buddha-ness to others. That's what we communicate with. That's what we look for. That's what we entreat. Not our wonderful vocabulary of warehouse understandings. That's an understanding that is no understanding, to put it another way. The Buddha said, and beings, Subhuti, beings are said by the Tathagata to be no beings. The concept of a being is an illusion, not the verb being, but the noun being. Thus are they called beings, and thus does the Tathagata say all dharmas have no self, all dharmas have no life, no individuality, and no soul. Because they're contemporaneous witnesses. They're not eternal. Buddha-ness is not eternal. Buddha-ness is subjective to your samsaric experience. Opening the doors and windows of your warehouse to perceive the greater life. Each one of our warehouses experiences that in its own particular way. But what is experienced is universal. It's not eternal, because to say it's eternal means that you own a piece of it. But your ownership is gone. That's the samsaric illusion. There's just Buddha-ness, clarity, complete and perfect. We're not going to go much further here. We're almost done with 17. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva should thus claim, quote, I shall bring about the transformation of a world, such a claim would be untrue. And how so? The transformation of a world, Subhuti, the transformation of a world is said by the Tathagata to be no transformation. Thus is it called the transformation of a world. Subhuti, when a bodhisattva resolves on selfless dharmas as selfless dharmas, the Tathagata, the fully enlightened one, pronounces that that person is a fearless bodhisattva. And that brings us to 18. So again, he's restating the same thing we've been talking about. In other words, address Buddha, the Buddha-ness in all life. Don't address the illusion of the warehouses. Don't use your warehouse as a fantastic explicator of how that warehouse should work. It's you're banging rocks together. That's why fundamentally it's so important to simply just chant with others, because that's an invocation of that very enlightenment, Buddha-ness. Every one of us will inculcate, sort our warehouses, our own particular warehouses, in our own particular ways to attain this universal insight. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I can't give you Buddha-ness, you can't give me Buddha-ness, but you can share your Buddha-ness such that I sense it and feel it and experience it for myself, and then my portal, my Gohanzan to Buddha-ness awakens. Now I'm curious. Something happened. I don't know what it was. Well, come on over. We'll do it again. And then we can talk about some of the study and some of the words, and we can have some way of communicating what is incommunicable. But always starts with chanting and ends with chanting. Engage that Buddha-ness. Each one of us experiences it through our own samsaric warehouse. That's okay. It's still Buddha-ness. Rely on that truth. Don't rely on intellect. That will always get in the way. That is always contemptible. All right. Enough for this lecture. Once again, I am incapable of expressing my gratitude for your participation, for your support. Like, subscribe, go to the bookstore if you like their books. I have a compendium of stuff. I have a lot of free stuff on threefoldlotus.com. You can download stuff that may help you talk about what we're doing with others or for yourself, right? There's also the podcast you can download anytime. You can collect them if you like listening to my voice or listening to what I'm talking about. And believe me, no illusions about... Anyway, just enjoy your practice. Strengthen it every day. Share it with others, as you do by liking and subscribing to this channel, right? Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I'll shut up now. Enough blah, blah, blah. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care of your health. Be kind to yourself. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.